All right, so like Sawa mentioned, we'll be looking at how to work with Excel tables. All right, we'll look at how to fix some data issues, specifically date issues, and then we'll look at one function that I think will change how you write Excel functions, and that's the let function. So just to walk you through, and then we start with the practical part. We'll look at how to build reports that auto update. This session is not for building a dashboard per se. Okay, so anything you see here is not exactly a dashboard. It's just a data entry sheet. All right. We did one webinar in May, and that was solely focused on dashboarding. So if anyone missed that particular session, right after we'll reshare the link for those who would want to go back and then check that video out. And then we'll look at how to fix some date issues. All right. And when we write this, we'll now refactor that same function with the let function. So we'll move from here to this. So I don't think in terms of length of the function, all right, this is much easier to write than this. I don't think so, but this is much more understandable. It's much more readable. And when you come back to this formula compared to this one, this is much easier to understand for anyone if you named the part correctly. So we look at how to refactor functions with a let function. All right. Okay, so without further ado, let me share my screen. Okay, can you all see my Excel worksheet? Sewak, can you confirm that for me?
No, we can't see it yet. We are still seeing the PPT.
Okay. So we have this sales entry file. So the scenario is that you work maybe in retail or anything for that matter, and you have to enter these things. So what people normally do is that, like, they start to enter. So let's say that we want to enter the next item, which is 15. Okay, so let's go here and pull the row 15. Of course, if you're entering this, you would enter this manually. I'm just copying to make it a lot faster. So let's assume that you want to calculate, for example, the amount. Okay, so we know that the amount will be the quantity times the price. Okay, so let's look at what this is, and then we'll look at what a proper Excel table would look like. So if I start to write the function, that's quantity times price, we get 5,200, no problems. We drag down, everything seems to work. We don't have the price here. Let me pull that in manually for now. Okay, so which product is this? You're looking for monitor 24 inches. So, no, I mean here. Sorry. I think it's right here, monitor. Okay, so the price is 1,200. So let's say that I'm making that entry, 1,200. So we have this populate for us. Now, if we need to add another item, so item 16, for example, so we are entering the next item in our sales sheet. So 16, we entered this. Let me bring that item. So we have this. Okay. Now, oh, excuse me. Sorry. Let me place it this way. Okay. So the price is still 1,200. So I entered the price 1,200. And we have this populate for us. So there are times that this thing works this way. So it's going to populate. There are times that it doesn't. So if you have a scenario where you make an input and then this thing that doesn't automatically work for you. So let me put in another one manually. Let me do today's date. I'm going to do Tema, for example. Let me repeat the same product, 1, and then let's use a different price for this. And this works. Okay. Now, there are instances where this thing just doesn't work. It doesn't auto-populate for you. So if you have such an issue, then you would want to use an Excel table. So I will distinguish between Excel tables versus ranges. And of course, based on your Excel version, this thing would work. I'm using Office 365, so sometimes things work for me All right. Most of you will be using, let's say, Office 2016, 2019, 2021, some 2024. Okay. So if you find yourself using any of these Excel versions, you do this sort of entry and it doesn't auto populate for you. So look at how to circumvent that kind of thing. Now, when we talk about tables and ranges, all right, like someone will say, like, isn't this a table? You are right and wrong. Okay, let me explain. So if you take this, Excel does not see this as a table structure. So when it comes to data types, okay, we know that we have, let's say, date, or let me say numbers. So number is a type of data. We have text, for example, we have Boolean, which is your true and false. Okay. We also have, let's say, list. So if I write something like 1, 5, 3, okay, this is a list. So it's also a data type. Now, another data type we have in Excel is tables. So tables will hold multiple values. So let me clear this one. And then I'm going to first recreate this whole section here just to compare. All right. Recreate this whole section. And then I'm going to convert this to a table. So to convert to a proper Excel table, you can just use the shortcut Control T. Control T. And then you have an Excel table. Or you could, let's see, data. Okay, don't worry. I'm very used to the shortcut, so let's do that. So Control T. And we have this in table format. Now, I personally don't like this formatting that Excel gives me, so I more often than not just clear it. Okay, so it looks like this, but this is in a proper table. And we know that because once we click anywhere within this range in quotes, Excel gives us this table design tab. If we click here, we don't have that, but we come back here and we have that tab showing. Okay. And the first thing I want us to do is to always rename our tables, because when you start to work on projects, if you have table 2, and let's say I'm in a new sheet, if I start to type table 2, nobody knows what table 2 means. So I think it's just proper we name things. Okay, so let's go back to our entry sheet, table design, and then let's name this one TBL underscore, let me make it sales entries. Okay, now the TBL underscore is just my convention because I could name anything in Excel. So I always want to distinguish between a table, a column, and a cell. So for tables, I always use the prefix TBL underscore. You can use whatever you like. Some people do T underscore that. Okay. So we have a table. The advantage is that if I come here, for example, and I start to type TBL, I see TBL sales entries. I can get my whole table back. There's no issue. Okay, so that's one of the nice things. Now, in terms of the calculation, if you check this, we see cell E2 times cell F2. Hold on, I think someone is. Okay, all right. So sorry about that. Okay, so if we see E2, you see E2 times F2. This is not very intuitive. Like you always have to figure out what E2 is, what F2 is. So when it comes to tables, tables give us a convention for formulas. So let me explain. At this point, it is still your normal reference N2 times O2, which is this times this. I'm going to clear that whole column, and then we are going to rewrite the formula. So we do equals this. Now, when I select quantity, you see that Excel gives me the name of the column. So it's at the column name. Then I can do multiplied by, when I select price, I get the name. So this is very easy to understand for anyone coming to your sheet. All right. Now I'm going to do something here. So let's say we have this. Okay. Just compare. I do E2 multiplied by price. and it doesn't auto-populate, okay, it might seem like a very small issue, but I have to now double click to fill down. If it's an Excel table, whatever I type auto populates. So if I come here, for example, and then let's say I want to multiply all this by 1.5, just an example, 1.5, then what's going to happen is this formula doesn't populate down. So for every time I make a change to my formula, I have to double click down. So this is one of the reasons I would go with Excel table. So this is a range. This is an actual Excel table. So that's one of the differences. Now, if you check down here, let me increase the page size. If you check down here, this blue right angled triangle, I don't know what is this. This blue thing down here shows me the end of the table. So I can, for example, expand the table by dragging that thing. Okay. And we have the calculation autofill for us. So the moment I do, let's say 18, for example, let's do today's date. And I use the shortcut key control and then semicolon. The moment I do that, let's still do tema. Let's repeat the same thing. Repeat. Oops. So everything is just nice and tidy for me. Okay. Now, when you start to get a little advanced, you don't even have to rely on, let me get this table back to where it was. Okay. You don't even have to have Excel like tell you the name, because I could just do into bracket, equals square bracket. And then we have the first thing is this row. All right. What I want here is the quantity. So I can start typing at quantity. So the same thing. All right. The reason I'm showing this is you don't always write your table formulas inside the table. So if you move to a different sheet, for example, then knowing this convention really helps. So at quantity, then times square bracket at the price. I can start typing price, filters, tab, and then I close the square bracket, enter. And the table automatically populated everything for me. Okay. Now let's calculate the total revenue. Okay. So I'm going to give some space here. In fact, let me insert a few cells in between them. Okay. So let's see how to calculate the total revenue using a range and then comparing that to using the Excel table. Okay. So total rev. So what we'll do is sum, of course, our regular old sum. Now I have to select everything here. Okay, of course, the faster way to do it is to select the first one. You hold the Control Shift and then down. Okay, and then we close it. Okay, now let's compare to the table. So I'll still write the table value just by it. So total rev table. Okay, so we see the difference. So with this, I can do sum into bracket. Now, because I am outside of the table, I first need to know the table name. So I'll do TBL. Now, because I did TBL, I know that all my tables are or begin with TBL. So it's very easy for me to figure that out. So TBL tab, it selects the whole table, but I don't need the whole table. I just need the amount column. So I'll open the square bracket and then go to amount. I need the entire column. Okay, so I close the bracket and let's see. Why do I have two different values? Let's check that first. Okay, so I have one extra row. Let me copy that. Or I can just delete this one. So delete the table row. And let's see why I have two different values. Okay, so I'm just going to copy the price and the amount to the other range. So we have the exact same data. Okay, so copy this. I didn't want that. Let me redo this calculation. Okay, Very good. So I have the exact same values. Now let's compare what happens as we update the two tables. Okay. So we are going to add a line. So 18, still using today's date for simplicity, duplicating. Let's still duplicate the price, 800. And then to make sure that we can see the top of this thing, I'm going to freeze this row. Okay, so whilst I scroll down, we can still see what's happening there. So go to the view tab and then notice that I've selected this part. And for freeze panes to work, you first select the cell or cells you need, and then the freeze panes is going to apply above it or to the left of it, or both. So in this case, because I'm selecting this entire row, when I go to freeze panes, I choose freeze panes, not top row. So now when I scroll, I see these two values. Let me give them a different color. Okay. So let's see what happens. I was adding this. Now you see that even though I added another line, this value still stays the same. So let me increase the quantity to, let's say, 10, just to make it a little bigger. Nothing happens. But let's go to the table and then add new data and compare what happens. So 18. Let's still use the exact same data. So duplicate. I did 10 here, and then the price is still 800. Now, immediately, this value updates. So that's one of the, for me, the best things you can do when you're making any form of data entry. I think that if the columns are consistent in terms of you have dates in a single column, let's say product in a single column, quantity in a single column, then it makes sense to use tables, because any calculations you do on the table, if you use the proper table referencing like this thing, then anytime the table updates, the function you have written will also auto update. All right. With this one, I now have to come here, for example, and then update my range to this. Okay. Now, someone would argue, I mean, rightly so, that in writing this function, of course, we could, let's say, expand it. So instead of J19, we could do like, let's say, J25. Okay. And the advantage with what the person has done is, the moment I add on any information here, of course, it's going to add up to this value. So in a certain way, yes, this is doable, but I just think that it's much cleaner to do this kind of stuff using proper Excel tables. Okay, so I'm going to just take this back like so. Okay, so we've seen one of the major advantages. Any function you write from a table auto updates. The ones that you do with the range, you have to now do the manual work of keeping it updated every time the table expands. Of course, even with the expansion of this to, let's say, 25, okay, I would always ask myself, what if I get to like 500? I will still have to come back. So me remembering to do this thing every single time for me is an unnecessary step. So I don't want to do it. Okay, so I prefer to keep things simple. Okay. So we've seen the advantage of using the table. Now there's something that I needed to fix, which is the price, because currently the price, I was entering it manually. But if you are doing any form of data entry, all right, for something like products, every single product will usually have a single price. Okay, so the way I think of it is have different sheets. Okay, so for instance, over here I have my product sheet, and on the product sheet, I have my product name, of course, the category belongs to, and the price, because price would normally be fixed per product. So instead of having to remember that the price of, let's say, this one is 1,200, you see I made a mistake here. The price of this is 1,200. I don't like to commit that thing to mind. I mean, it's taking unnecessary space in my head. So let's clear this, and then let's fetch that information instead. We are going to use a lookup function. There are multiple ways of doing this. I'll just use the simplest. So I'm going to do X lookup. Now, I know a lot of people love VLOOKUP, all right, or when they hear lookup, normally what they know is VLOOKUP, which I mean it's fine. So let me demonstrate the two. Why VLOOKUP for me is a no-no. Okay, so you're going to write VLOOKUP. Now the syntax of the lookup functions generally is that you want to know which value you are looking for. So I'm looking for, so that's how I read it. I'm looking for this product. Okay, and let me track back a little. I don't like to write my formulas directly in the cells. It's way better to write it directly in the formula bar. So I'm going to do VLOOKUP tab. I'm looking for desktop PC. Where do I find this desktop PC name? It's in the products sheet. So I find it in this list. Now, column index number is basically asking, what do I want in return? If I look within this, which of these columns do I want back? I need the price back. All right. So if I find desktop PC, I want to return the corresponding price. So I'll go ahead and select. Sorry. I'm thinking of XLOOKUP. So it's asking for table array, not column array. So I need to select the whole table rather. Okay. So it means I'll find this desktop PC in this range. And normally VLOOKUP checks for the first column. So it looks in this column, finds desktop PC and gives me whichever column I specify. So the column to return is 1, 2, 3, the unit price. So I'm going to type 3. And then the last argument is whether whether in looking for the product, do I want to find an approximate match or an exact match? Most likely you will want to do an exact match. So let's do that. An exact match. We close the bracket and we have our price. Let's confirm desktop PC 5,200. Let's see. 5,200. Okay, so that's correct. Now the next thing we need to fix, okay, is as we drag this function down, we see we have a lot of NAs and stuff like that. So if we do a careful inspection, you'd see that the range keeps changing. So we have A2 to C11. Here is A3 to C12. This one is A8 to C17. But this table is a fixed range. So we need to fix all of those ranges. Okay. So this is also one of the things I don't like about using ranges in general. So when we go to the table, we'll see how easy and how efficient it is. So let's compare. Let's see, what do we need to do? We need to fix this thing. So I'm going to select all this and then press F4. So that fixes the entire range for me. Press enter. Now when I drag down, everything should work. Perfect. So let's just confirm a few of them. External HDD, let's see. Let me expand this. External HDD 650. 650. Okay, so VLOOKUP works. Now, why am I saying that VLOOKUP is a no-no? I'm going to do a small change to this table. So I'll drag this all the way here. Okay. And for those who didn't know what I did, let me just undo and then show you. So I want to swap these, like bring this to the end. So what most people will do is they'll cut this, paste here, and then delete this column. There's something much more efficient than that. So you just select the column you need. You bring the cursor to the edges of the selection. When I start dragging, you see that it's trying to override it, but I'll hold the shift key and then I have this line. Okay, so when I leave the mouse, it just swaps everything for me. Now let's go back and check what happens. Everything is an error. Okay, and it's because the way VLOOKUP works is that it's looking for this lookup value, this value, every single time in the first column of the selection. In this case, our column is the third. So VLOOKUP does not work. So it needs a lot of fixing every time the structure of something changes. So I personally don't like it. So let's see what this would look like if you use the XLOOKUP for that. So I'm going to clear this. Let's see XLOOKUP. So let me see almost the same syntax. It starts with the lookup value. What am I looking for? I'm looking for desktop PC. Where do I find desktop PC? I find it in the products list. Now look at the argument. It is no more table array. It is just lookup array. So I have to select just a single column, not the entire table. So column is this one. The next argument is what I want in return. So this time, instead of specifying the column number, it allows us to choose the column on our own. So we choose, sorry, we needed the price, so we choose this one. And then if I don't find it, I can say not found. All right, so not found, which we didn't have with the VLOOKUP. Match mode, I want an exact match, so I'll choose exact match. And then the search mode, it's not a composure argument, so for me, I usually ignore it. So, and then one last thing, I need to fix these ranges. So fix this F4, fix this F4, and then let's see. Okay, so it works. Now let's change the structure of the table and see if it's robust. So I'll select this one, drag to the left, and then replace it. Let's go back and check. Okay, so XLOOKUP doesn't break if the underlying structure of the data changes. Okay, so that's why for me, I prefer XLOOKUP. And the fact that it allows me to specify something that is not found. So if let's say I typed in monitor 24 inches and then someone made a mistake and put, let's say, a little space at the end, it's going to tell me, okay, value not found. All right. And if you find something like this, how do you deal with this error? So let me just teach that right now. In case, let's say, someone enters something wrongly, for which reason this amount column is going to give us an error, we can handle that error. So we have to change our formula. So I'm going to wrap this. Let me drag this down. So I'm going to start typing if error. Okay. Now the if error works like this. The first argument is the actual calculation I was doing before, which is still there. So nothing changes with this. Now the second argument is if this calculation gives me an error, what do I want to show? Let's say that I want to show just a dash. Okay, a dash. Okay, so I see a dash. Maybe I want to show an emoji. Let's see, maybe this one. Okay, so we see that emoji right there. Okay, so if we do the correct thing, we delete this space, we have our value back. So that's how to handle errors. All right. Now, having said that, I don't recommend you just wrapping everything around like with an if error or if any handler. The reason is when we did the VLOOKUP, we got errors. All right. But then we knew that error is because the table structure was different from what we expected. So you don't always use error handlers to hide things. Sometimes look at the error and see what's really going on. When you are sure that, okay, there's an error that you want to hide, then you feel free, you go ahead with that. Now, see the amount of work we needed to do to make sure that we update this thing. So if I change this thing to, let's say, double check, for example, I have to make sure I drag up, I drag down. So let's compare what it would look like if I was using the actual Excel table. So let's see, let's delete the price column and rewrite everything. So we are going to use XLOOKUP straight out. The lookup value, of course, we are still looking for excuse me, we are still looking for desktop PC. So XLOOKUP, we are looking for desktop PC. What is the lookup array? Where do we find this? We find this in this products column. So I'm going to select all this. Now, for me, this, like having to select this is work enough, because if I have like, let's say 500 products, which means that like I'm going all the way down. I don't want to do select the first one, control shift and down. Like it's a bit unnecessary for me. So I'm going to do something a little different. So let's convert this two to a table. Okay. So control A. In fact, that's not even important. Just select anywhere and do control T. We have this table. So let's rename it to TBL, and I'm going to call this products. Okay. Like we did with the first one, I can reference this one anywhere. So TBL underscore products. Now you see that we have the two tables in our sheet. We have the products and the sales entries. So products, we have it here. Okay, undo. I don't need that. And of course, I hate this default formatting, so I'm going to clear it. Okay, now let's go back, and then as we start to write the function, let's see a little difference. So XLOOKUP, we are looking for desktop PC. Now, what is the lookup array? I mean, where do we find this product? We find it in the products list, but in a particular column. Now, with tables, I don't have to do this. I don't have to. I can just select the top. So you see, when you hover the mouse over the column name, which is like B, you see a black arrow. If you select that, it's going to select everything from cell B1 to cell B 1 million plus. But because I'm using an Excel table, if I hover the mouse right on top of the table header, you see I get the same black down arrow. Not here, it's right here. So when I select that, with the first click, it selects the data without the header. If I click it again, it gives me the data and the header. Okay. In my case, I just want the data part, so I'm going to click like this. Okay. So even without coming to this sheet, I could have just written TBO products into bracket product, and I would have gotten the same thing. But let's move on. Now, when I find the product, what do I want in return? I want the unit price. So I also come and select that unit price. If I don't find it, I'm going to put an emoji, and I get that by doing Windows key and the full stop. So let me look for laughing emoji just, and then I close it. I want an exact match. Okay, so exact match, close the bracket. I didn't have to write this formula multiple times or drag down. The moment I press enter, everything auto-populates for me, and that's why I prefer tables when I'm doing data entry, or in fact any form of analysis. I prefer my things to be in tables. Okay, now let's see. Okay, so with what we've done, if I enter a different product, let's say let's do 19 for this one. Okay, so 19, still enter today's date. I'm going to use, let's say, Kumasi for this example. Let's type laptop. Now, the moment I type laptop, check what happens here. The price is automatically pulled in for me because the XLOOKUP function I wrote is working. Now I see 0 because I haven't entered my quantity. If I enter 2, it works. This one also auto updates. So personally, I prefer tables to ranges. And if there's anything that I want you to take out of this session, it's that in a lot of data entries, you are better off using Excel tables compared to Excel ranges. Now, let me fix this thing. I didn't even see it initially. Dates. All right. So this is supposed to be dates. Why is it showing me as numbers? Okay. It's because Excel dates are basically numbers. All right. I think starting from 1900. So 1900. And that's where it starts to calculate the serial number from. So I just have to change this formatting to date. So let me do date. Okay, so I think this is fine. Okay, so that's fixed. I think now we get the concept of tables versus ranges. So I'll just go ahead and then hide this part. So hide it. And we have our table here. Okay. Now, another thing that I need to show is, in fact, okay, it's okay. We can still demonstrate with this. Now, this is a data entry sheet. There are a few things we can do to improve the view. All right, because when people think about building nice spreadsheets, they think about dashboards. You don't need to do a dashboard to make something look pretty. Even with this, we can beautify it just a little. So we are going to look at how to beautify even our data entry sheet. So the first thing I will do is I'll go to the view tab and then remove the grid lines. Like those lines, I don't know, for some reason I don't like them. I prefer to remove them, and then on this table add a border. So I'm going to go to more borders. Instead of bringing in like a very black border, I'll do something different. Let's say this light blue. If my primary color is blue, then I'll go with blue. Okay, so let's use this darker blue, and I'm going to choose both outline and inside. Okay, so I have the borders in quotes. All right, or let me say the grid lines in quotes. So if I add another entry point, you see we get the whole thing just showing up. The border shows, and this one is just funny. So instead of handling this, you know what? I think it's fine. Let's duplicate Kumasi laptop. Let's make this one. Okay, and everything works. Now the next thing we can do is, instead of having this thing sit right at the top, I prefer to leave a few lines, and I'll show you why. So let's select this whole table and then drag it. So I'm going to drag it here. Let's see. I think I have too much space. Let me drag it back, maybe to, yeah, okay. In fact, I think I prefer still having some space on my left. I'll drag this one to here and then just close this a bit. Now, one of the first things, okay, what just happened? I was supposed to get a full border. So let me go back. Border, I choose this blue color, outside, inside. Let's see. Okay, better. Now, we can add slices. Now, when people think of slices, they think about graphs, but you can add slices right within Excel tables. Okay, so in the table, once I select anywhere within the table and I have this table design tab, I click on that and then I see insert a slicer. So let's say that we want to be able to slice our data, for example, by let's say the area, for example. So area. So what happens is, if I click Accra, it shrinks. If I click Kumasi, it shrinks. Okay. Takrady, it shrinks. Okay. So even on our entry sheet, because sometimes you've made entries, but you just want to be sure if there's a particular line you entered or otherwise. And having this slicer here is better than coming to this one and then let's say you're trying to go through like this, select Kumasi, select Tamale, click OK. I mean, that works, but I can just click one at a time. It works. What if I want to click two things? I'll just hold the control key on my keyboard and then select the second one. Let's say Kumasi and Tema. So control, Tema, we have both selected. Now, I think it would be nice the moment this list updates to also have my revenue update. Okay, so it's like instead of having this fixed value sitting there, I want it to update based on what is visible. Now the sum function we use does not give us that thing, but Excel has two functions for that. One is the aggregate function, aggregate, and the other is, I think, subtotal. Yes, oops, I can't spell, too bad. Subtotal. Okay, so let's see. I prefer the aggregate because it's more recent. It has a lot of functionality. The older Excel versions had just subtotal. The more recent ones will have the aggregate. I think from 2019. I'm not entirely sure about that. Okay, so let's rewrite this formula. I'll leave this here. Okay, and then we see how it compares to aggregate. So aggregate has 19 different functions within it. For our case, we want to sum. So we choose sum. Now, comma. The next argument is asking us for options. Now, what the options look like is basically do we want to include the value if the cell is hidden, if it's not hidden, that kind of thing. So for us, if the row is hidden, so ignore hidden rows. That's what we want. So I'll select number 5. And then for the array, it's asking us which column are we, which is our amount column. So the last argument, the k, is an optional argument, so I'll leave it. And now I get 34800. Let's apply the same formatting. I'll select this paintbrush, apply it here. We have the exact same formatting. Now let's clear everything. The same values, but the moment I start to filter, this gives me a sum that updates based on what is visible. Okay, so that's one thing that I would do. Now, having the slicer on this right side is not very useful in my opinion, because once you start to drag, okay, when you start to drag this thing, like you lose the slicer. So I think that it will be better to have it on top this way. So I'm going to, of course, take out these values from here. Let me put them here for now. We'll come back to those two values. And then I'll put this slicer right at the top. And I want to have it span across multiple columns. So I'll select the slicer. Like the tables, we have a slicer tab now. You see tables, table design, slicer, we have a slicer tab. So on there, we can change the number of columns to, let me do 4 columns for this one. Okay, so when I start to stretch this out, we see the 4 columns. And let's see. Okay, so 4 columns. Maybe I should make it 5. 5. Okay, that's better. And if you don't like to see this area thing at the top, like the title, you can just right click the slicer, settings, and then we uncheck the display header. Okay, so I think for me this is much better. Hold on. Okay. All right, so this is how to insert a filter or slicer in a table. It looks much better, and I think I like the position. Do I like the position of this freeze pin? No, because when I drag my table down, I lose the headers, which I don't want it that way. So I'll drag this. You know what? Let me clear everything first. I'll drag this up here. And what just happened? Let me see what just happened. Okay, that's a very interesting behavior, but it's fine. I'll check on it shortly. Oh, okay. So it didn't select everything for me. So let me drag up. Okay, yes, better. Now I want this freeze pane to rather be here, so that when I scroll down, I can still see the headers. So I'll just select what is below the headers. So this part, go to, you know what, let me select the entire row. Go to view, freeze panes. I need to unfreeze first. So unfreeze the panes, and then I'll freeze the panes again. This time it's going to take this one and freeze them for me. So much better in my opinion. Okay. Now something that I forgot to mention is with these total calculations, what people normally do is that they put their totals at the end of the table. Okay. So if you need to do that, that is if you need to, I mean, I discourage it, but if you need to do that, there's a better way than writing the function. Let's say you write your sum, I mean, equals sum, and you select all this. Okay. I wouldn't recommend this because you're using Excel tables. There's a functionality for that. So I can show a total row right here. All right. The reason I discourage it is, you know what, let's just add another entry point. You see, when I need to add on to this table, this thing just messes everything up. So for me, I prefer to have my totals up so that when I'm going downwards, it doesn't affect my calculations or my entries. Okay, and that's the reason I did this kind of thing. Now, the next thing that I would do is, I think I would want to bring this value here. Okay, so something like this. Let me drag it. Okay. So having it here, not a bad idea in itself, but I would want it to like being able to to move it more flexibly. So let me get rid of this one, and I'm going to copy this calculation and then create a new sheet. Okay, that's something I normally do. So I'll create a new sheet, call this calculations. Okay, and then I will move this function here. So paste it. So I have the exact same value, and I'll name this revenue. Okay, now watch what is happening. Revenue. Let me copy the format. Let me just put a comma by it, bolding it. Okay, so instead of having this thing that for me like moving around is like it's fixed to the cells. I don't like that kind of behavior. So I'll insert a text box like so, and then the trick is I want this text box to reference the cell, the calculation cell. So this one. So let me come back, select the text box, and then in the formula tab I'll do equals, and then come to the calculation sheet and then select this one. Okay, press enter, and I have the same value here. Okay, so not so bad. Okay, now this is very flexible. I can move this anywhere I want. Okay, let me put this. Okay, I think this is fine. Now, the next thing I want to do is this number here doesn't mean anything. Okay, it would be nice if I can see, let's say, total revenue. Okay, colon the amount XXX. Okay, so how do we combine a text like this or a calculation like this with text? It's very simple. So let me demonstrate that here, and then we'll look at how to fix that with this. So I'm going to type Isaac. I'm going to type Somwa, and I'm going to type 8 years. No, I'm going to type 8 and years. Okay. So I want to create a text, like a sentence out of this. So I can do equals this cell, which is Isaac. So Isaac, and then let's see. So Isaac is, for example, now I don't have the is in this, so I can put the ampersand sign and then open a quotation. So Isaac is, now let's see what we get with these two. So you see Isaac is showing here. So I have a cell reference, and then I also have a text. Okay, so to get the space, I can just put the space before this, and that's it. So you're basically going to apply the same concept. So Isaac is, let's say 8. All right, 8, let's say years. So I'm going to concatenate this again. Years old. Okay, and then I need an extra space after the is, so I just put it here. So that's how to combine a text and a number. So we apply the same principle here. So in this is our first part. Now what I like to do is, if a function starts getting long, I want to separate the lines. So I'll put this, let's say Alt Enter. So I have some space. And then at this section, I want to type revenue. Okay, so revenue colon, and then I'll close it. Now, if I press enter, I'll get an error because I can't combine a normal text and a function. Okay, so let me close this. I'll need to combine them with the ampersand sign. So text and a calculation. Let me press enter. So I get exactly what I want. Now, the problem with this is, let's see. I need to have the, what do you call it? The comma show, because like I have 282, there's no comma before the 720. I had this when it was just a number. So how do I fix this whole thing? So I can wrap again this function within the text function, because this is the part that gives me the revenue. And in Excel, if you want to double check what a particular line in a function gives you, you can just select that line and then press F9. So when I press F9, I see the value. So that's what I'm looking for. So I'll press escape, select, in fact, let me just do, so text function, the value is this entire calculation. And then how do I want to format this as a number? So I'll put it in quotes. I think for comma separated, we do hash, comma, hash, hash, and then 0. Okay. Okay, that didn't quite, okay, I need to close the quotation. All right, so now that works. I think it would be nice if I have like revenue Ghana cedis. Okay, so revenue, I can just add that after the colon, I can do GHS. Let me see how it looks like. Okay, I need an extra space after this. Okay, much better. So when I go back to the sales entries, I have it show like this. Okay, so for me, this looks much better. I may want to add some formatting to the box itself. Let's forget about that for now. Okay, this is not a dashboard tutorial. Okay, so I think now we get a fair idea of how to have like much prettier entry sheets. All right, that's, let's say, it gives us auto updated calculations. Now the next thing I want us to look at is a problem that my students faced. So when we were doing Excel for professionals, I think both cohort 1 and 2, they had this problem. So the project work had calculations on date, and it messed up their capstone project. Okay, so we fixed that. I want to teach that on this webinar. So briefly, let me bring that sheet up. Let me save this one. Let me bring that sheet up. Where are we? So fixing date issues. Okay, you know what? Let me create a new sheet. Okay, and I'm going to go to the site for them. So let me bring that up, and then I download the data so that we see the data real time. I've not done anything to it. We are all starting from the same blank page. So let me log in. So that's the platform we use for the course. Okay, so for those who would want to join the course later on, this is the platform we use. So let me go to, I think any of them is fine really. And then capstone projects. Let me see, is it here? Is it here? Is it here? Okay, so I need this sales data. So let me download it. Okay, very good. So I'm just going to copy this one because it's a CSV file. I don't like to work in CSV files because these files don't keep formatting. Like if I put in a color here, for example, if I save the file and come back, that color is gone. So I don't like to work with CSV files. So I'll just copy this into this sheet. I open this sheet blank. There's nothing inside. Okay, so we're all starting from the same starting point. Okay, so let me close the other sheet. Where is it? The CSV file. Right here. Let me close it. Don't save. Yes, I guess. Okay. So we have the normal Excel sheet. So I'm just going to give it a little formatting just so everything is easy to read. Increase the size of the page. Adjust this. Okay. Now, this thing is a very important topic. All right. Date issues. Because, first of all, if you look at this date, how do I know for sure if it is April 30th, 2022? Now, this is very easy to spot. Okay. Let's scroll down and see other dates. Let's see. Okay, so a very good example here. If I see 4, now let me highlight this. If I see 04, 9, 22, there are two interpretations to this. It can be 4th April 2022, or it can be, is it, sorry, not 4th April, I mean 4th September. 4th September, and why am I so into the future? Okay, or it can be 9th April 2022. So the first thing I want everyone to do, anytime you make date entries, okay, let me pull this up. I think it's fine. Anytime you make date entries, the first thing I want everyone to do is make sure that you can see the month, because if I write 4/9/22, we don't know which of these two is referring to. And you might think that, oh, okay, like anytime I enter my date, it comes in a particular format. Let me show you, you could be wrong. So I'm going to enter this date again. So 04/9/22. Sorry, 04/9/22. Now we don't know. So there's only one way to find out. I'll do control 1. What just happened? Control 1, yes. So control 1. And then I'll go to number. And then on the date side, I want to select a date format that has the month name. So I'm sure that it's this or this. So let me select 14th March, this one. Okay, that's format. So it gives me the day, the month, and the year. So based on what I entered, the 4/9/22, it's telling me that the date is actually 4th September, not 9th April. Now I'm going to show you something. Let's go to our original settings. So I'm going to go to start, regional settings. And then in this section, okay, this regional format, you go down and let's change the formats. So currently it's set to 05. I mean, the day, the month, and the year. So that's the format shown here, day, month, and year. So if for some reason your system changes this format, so let's select, let's see. So let's select one with the month first. So the month is April. So I think this one has the month first. Okay. This has the month first. And then I'm going to close this. Let's see if I have to even close Excel first. Let's try it. So 4/9/22. The exact same, no, I entered. Okay, so now I'm really confused. What just happened? Okay, but let's see. So it was, wait a second. Let me go back and restore the settings before I continue. So original settings. Let me go back to what it was. So change formats. We have this. Okay. Aha, very good. So it changed. So what I'm going to do is, it's 4/9/22. Let me take a picture of this so I don't get confused. And then I'll place the picture right back here. Okay, so we see the exact format in which our data was. Let me add a little shadow so I can see this thing clearly. Okay, better. Now I'm going to go to the original settings and change this to start with the month. Okay, now let's go back. Dates have changed, but I remember I entered 04/9/22. So let me enter 04/9/22. Still, we don't know which of these two it is, whether it is 4th September or 9th April. So we'll go back to our date format, select the same one we selected. Now you see that when I did it the first time, it was 4th September. After changing my date format, the same way I entered it, it's now reading 9th April. So this thing can throw people off. Like you have issues with dates. Normally, it's because you are not checking your original format. For us as let's say for those of us on the call from Ghana, all right, because we normally read day, month, and year, I think it's better that on your system you change this format to day, month, and year. Of course, if you're working with a remote team, let's say a US-based company, their format is normally month, day, and year. So you want to adjust those settings, all right? But this thing is the source of date problems in Excel. So for me, I always want to double check. Once I enter a date, I change so that I can see the month. So I know exactly what is going on in the sheet, all right? So hope that helps someone. Now, the problem they face this same issue, like we have a date issue here. Let's see, let's change this back to this. We have a serious date issue. So what they were supposed to do was they're supposed to analyze something based on the monthly trend. Now, they couldn't because once some of them did their dates, once they get to this section, the system gets confused. So all of the dates are supposed to be in April, but then it was reading this as October. So it messed up their analysis. So I'm going to show you how, if you have like a date issue, because once the data has already been entered, you can't do much about it, honestly. You'd have to just like break it apart and then rejoin. So that's what we are going to do. But then if you're now making the entries, then make sure you check these settings before you start, because it will give you trouble down the line. So let's see how to go about this issue. So for me, one of the best solutions, all right, if you're not using Power Query, all right, if you're not using Power Query, if you want to do everything in Excel, is let's break apart this, and that. So the 430 and the 22, because we know that our first part is always the month. The second part is the last part is the year. If we check this other one, it seems to have the same structure. Let's go down. It's still 4, 12, 22. Okay, it seems to have the same structure. So let's split them first and then we join everything back. Okay, so it's just like, so let me show you the end and then we start. We are going to have something like 04 in one cell, 30 in a different cell, 22 in a different cell. And then we use a function called the year function. And with that, no, not year, I mean date function. And with the date function, we can specify the year. So the year will be this, the month will be this one, and the day will be this cell. Okay, now I think Excel was smart enough to notice that this value, even though it is 22, it's actually 2022. All right, so let's double check. Let's choose a date format that has the full year. So I can't find it yet. No, let me just do YY. Okay, so Excel was not smart enough. It's actually gave me 1922. I remember I mentioned that when Excel counts years, it starts counting from 1900. So the moment I enter just 22, it thinks that it is 1922. So we need to, in this function, find a way to add 20 back to this. Okay, so once we start solving this problem here, we'll see how it's done. So let me set three columns. We'll call this one month, we'll call this day, we'll call this year. Okay, and the first thing we need to do is, you know what, I think, let me not go against my own words. I would convert this to a table before we start. Table. No formatting. And then what do I do next? I need to rename the table. So let's make this TBL. You can call it sales. Okay. Now let me set 3 columns. 1, 2, 3. Insert. We call this the month, the day, and the year. So we basically are going to do the same thing we've done. That's the logic. And then in the next cell, we are going to combine them as date new. Okay, so let's see how to do that. Now, Excel allows us to split things like this. And what most people might do is they might do things like text to columns. So they'll come. Where's text to columns? It's been a long time I use that. I can't even find it. It's fine. But they'll use text to columns. Data. Okay, so data text to columns. It's been a while. Okay, very good. Then they'll split based on a delimiter. So they will choose the dash. Okay, so other, I put in the hyphen, split it for me, next, finish. Okay, so the first thing is that I lose my original data. That's one. Okay, the other thing is that if I began with this and then I added on more data, then I actually am not able to repeat the same thing. Like I have to now go back and do the same text to columns, which is for me like it's too much work. So I prefer to use functions to split them. So we have the text split function. So text split, which splits text based on a delimiter. So the text I want to split it is this one. What am I using? What am I using to separate these things? I'm using the hyphen. Now the row delimiter. Or let me see. Wait a minute. So column delimiter, split into columns here. So I need the hyphen. Now I don't need a row delimiter per se. So I'll just close everything here. Once you see something in square brackets, it's not compulsory. And for this one, I don't need them. So I'll just close everything here. Okay, now this is where our problem starts. We see a spell error. But then if I did the same thing outside of the table, so I'm going to copy, you know what, let me just do text split. In fact, before then, let me get rid of all these. So I'll do equals text split. The text was the date, all right? And then I wanted to split by the hyphen. So hyphen. Okay, so it works here, right? Like I write one function, it's able to split into different cells. Why is this not working in the table? It's because at this time, Excel tables don't allow you to use dynamic array functions. So this function is part of dynamic array functions. It's something that we teach in our course. You can also check it out on YouTube. So dynamic array functions. So Excel is not allowing me to split because in a table, these things don't work. So what do I do? All right. Now I know my end. So let me show you. Once I enter this, I can use another function called the index function. Okay. To give me just this part. So if I select all this, and then the row number, I mean, is the same row, so I'll just write 1. By the column, I need the first column. So if I write 1, it's going to give me 0.4. If I repeat this function, okay, and this time starts, you know what, I want the second item back. So I'll choose number 2. It'll give me 30. I'll do the same thing for the last one. I need number 3 back. So it'll give me number 3 back. Okay, so I can wrap the index function around this one. So index. Now this whole thing gives me 3 numbers. I can check that, like I mentioned earlier, with the F9 key. So it gives me 4, 30, and 22. So press escape. Let's rewrite it. We have the index function. This gives me 3 values. The row number is the same row, so I'll just specify 1. But the column, for the month, I know that my month is the first item, so I'll choose 1. I get the month back because it's a single value now. Excel makes it work. Now, let's inspect. I still see other numbers. I was expecting to see 0.4 throughout. So why am I seeing other numbers? Let's go down and then see. You know what? Let's filter this and see these other values. Now, you see when we get here, what's happening? Things don't work as they should work. Very strange. Hold on. Okay, so I spotted a problem. Is that the delimiter here, you have 0.4 dash. I think that there's a space right before the 30. I don't know, but that's what I'm seeing. I can't figure it out. Maybe not. So let's see. Split this. Let me just change the formatting of this thing and see. It's a dates. Okay, so still, so 0430. So that works. It doesn't work on the other one. So let's see why. Okay, what I'm thinking is happening is maybe this one is formatted as a date or as a number. I'm not even sure. Let me just change the formatting of this whole thing. Make it general. That doesn't work. Let me make it number. Still doesn't work. This is going to be hard. Hold on. To figure out what is happening here. Okay, so let me go down and then I'm going to write this. So text split. I'm going to split this. The column delimiter is the dash, right? Okay, so something is weird with these ones, and I need to figure that out now. 04322. Oh, okay. I think I have an idea. Let me do Control-1 and change this to date. Okay. It makes sense. So it's because Excel is recognizing these ones as dates, as actual dates. So it's not able to split because the text split function works on text, not numbers, and dates are numbers, and that's why it's behaving this way. Okay. So let me go up. Let me see. Okay. So maybe the first thing I'll do is let me convert this whole thing to text. So let me see, go down. Okay, showing as numbers. Okay, but wait a minute. Once it's a date, I don't even have to bother about it per se. So I'm going to change my logic. So I'm going to choose short date. Now let's see if it works. Okay, so it's now an actual date. So it's fine. So this is something we can use. So I'm going to change this to see the month. So month. Okay, so it means for this, I have to change my logic in the sense that I only want to split if Excel is seeing it as a text. Okay, now because dates are numbers, I can write the logic around that. So let's see. I'm going to say that we're only going to use this function if the cell here is not a number. So I'll cut this and I'll say if, excuse me, so you're going to do if this one, so if the date is text, let me do is text. Okay, so let's use that like a reverse logic. So if it is text, then I want to perform the function. So the value if true is this whole thing. If it's false, I'll not do anything. Let me close it for now and see what happens. So when we inspect, we get false. Okay. So in fact, if it's false, then I don't want to do anything because those ones don't have a problem per se. So I can do everything without them. So I'll show nothing. So the false is still fine. So I have zeros and false. Now let me copy this one for this day. Now we know that our day is in the second position. So you're going to change the function here. So let's see. Column number, we need 2. Okay. And then for our year, we know it's supposed to be the last part of it. So the last part, which is number 3. Okay, so that's how I would think about this whole thing. So number 3, and then let's see. So everything to enforce, very good. But for the year, we need to add 20 to it. And we saw how to do that already. So we do 20 and the rest of it so that we get the year back. Okay, so it's either the year or false. Now you see that it's added 20 to everything. So I don't want the 20 added to the whole thing. Okay, so I'm going to only, let's see, before I added this thing. So let me delete this one. Before I added this, I got 22 and 4. So if it is false, then I don't want to do anything to it. So I'm going to copy all this and then write that if the output of this function equals false, then what do I want to do? Then I want to keep it as false. Let me see. Okay, so I have now 22 and false. So when we come to the date new, what we need to do now is to combine all these, and we can use the year function. Sorry, I mean the date function. So date function, we have the year, which we need to specify first. Wait a minute. I need to add the 20 to this whole thing. Okay, so let's see. Or in fact, I could just build this directly in, so it's fine. So you can do the date function. The year is 20. Let me do 20 and, okay, we do 20 and this value. And then the month is, of course, this. The year, month is that, the day is this value. Okay, so now we have a proper date. Okay, of course, I could go ahead and then correct all of these ones. Okay, like add a logic that says that if this one is a proper date, then like this one should just work, and then if it's not, then we apply this function. Okay, now the next thing I wanted us to look at before we close is writing this function like gets messy very easily, and that's why for me the let function is a game changer, because it allows us to break things into pieces. So I'll just give you like a brief introduction to that formula. So this whole thing, like it's not very readable. Okay, so I'm going to take a picture of this, paste it back. Where is it pasted? Okay, paste it back. And then we look at how to rewrite this same thing using the let function. Okay, so that's the last thing we'll learn. The let function, just an introduction. Okay, because of time, because I wanted to close at 8:30. So let's see. So how does the let function work? Now, if you remember what we did in JSS, or let me say primary, you see things like x equals 2, y equals 5. So x plus y equals 7, that kind of thing. So we are able to define variables, or let's say age of Amma is 20, age of Kofi is 30. So the total age of Kofi and Amma is age of Amma plus age of Kofi. Like that whole thing that we're doing is the same thing we are going to apply here. So I'm going to give you a simple example, and then we see how to apply it over a function like this that starts to get a little complicated. So you write the equal sign, okay, and then let's say let. Now let's understand the syntax of the let function. The first one is, or let me say, it comes in combinations. So it's the name of the parameter, or let me say the variable. So for instance, age of Kofi. So let's write age. Let's write age of Kofi. And then instead of equal to, we use the comma to give the pair. So age of Kofi is 30. Another comma. Then I'll use the alt enter just to give me like another line. Then age of Amma is 20. Okay, so in the last step, we can say that we want the age of Kofi plus the age of Amma we get 50. Okay, so we are going to use the let function to break everything we've done here down. So just see. So we write let. The first thing I want to do is look at this. It's text index. So let's first deal with the index part. Like after we split, let's save the splitting as parts. So I'm going to name the first one as parts. So my parts will be the index function. Sorry, I mean it will be the text split function. Text split function. Okay. And then the delimiter, or let me say text split function, the text is the date. So I need this one. Now the next argument is the column delimiter, which in our case we said was the hyphen. So hyphen. Okay. And then let's close it. Now in the next part, we need the month. So month number, for example, that will be index of. So which array? Now this thing here, if I press F9, gives me numbers. Okay, so that's how I'm thinking about it. So let me okay. So index, I need the first part back. So the month number is this part. Then the row number is still one. It's on the same row, but the column, I need the first item back. So I'll choose 1. Now I'm not done. When I press enter again, what I want get returned in the last step is that I want the month number back. So let's see. Wait, so I have the part. There's a comma here that I missed. And then I want the month number back. So let me close the bracket and I get 04. So for me, this thing is much more easier to read than this. Okay. And of course, we can now come and say that let me, instead of returning the month number at this point, I can come and add another step that, let's say, text check, for example, just to check for text. And then we'll say that which one? The date is text. So we want to check if the date is a text. Okay. So the whole date thing, this thing, we want to check if this date is text. So it's text. So it's text. Okay. So we've also saved this as a variable, and this will give me true or false. Okay. Then we can come and say that if the text is false, do this. So like the let function overall just breaks everything down in a much simpler way. Okay. So it's something that you can check out on the internet and then like have a look at it. Our time is actually up, so I wouldn't be able to finish it up. But I hope you get the concept. And it's one function that if you learn, it will change a lot of things for you. It will make writing Excel formulas a lot easier.